Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 31st of August 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says Nilgiri Tahr climb the population charts. So what we will be discussing in this article is with reference to Nilgiri Tahr and also one of the other important points from the prelims perspective, and that is the Mukurti National Park. So first let us get to understand some of the factual data which can be potentially asked in the prelims examination. So what are these facts? One is the IUCN status. So the IUCN status of the Nilgiri Tahr is endangered, and the Nilgiri Tahr is locally known as Nilgiri Ibex or simply Ibex, that is endemic to the Nilgiri Hills. So this becomes a very important point from the prelims perspective, and the southern portion of the Western Ghats in the states of Tamil Nadu as well as Kerala. So in which region are they seen in? One is Tamil Nadu, the other one is in Kerala. So they are seen only in these two states and they are endemic to the Nilgiri Hills, and it is the state animal of Tamil Nadu and the largest of the three Tahr species that are available in India. And then this Nilgiri Tahr is fully protected under the Schedule 1 of the Indian Wildlife Act of 1972, the Mukurti National Park. So what does it say? So it says that this Mukurti National Park is in the region of Tamil Nadu. So this can be a potential question in the prelims examination. So kindly remember these important facts with reference to this article, and this is exclusively reserved in order to protect the keystone species of Nilgiri Tahr. But what is this article speaking about? So what this article basically goes on to say is that a recent census has revealed that the population of the Nilgiri Tahr has increased, and at an impressive 18% in the last 2 years, from 480 to 560. So there has been a genuine increase in the numbers of this Nilgiri Tahr. However, what we also need to consider is there are certain threats to these Nilgiri Tahrs. So what are these threats? Let's understand them. So the first thing that we need to consider is researchers point to the continuing spread of invasive species of flora. What are invasive species? Those plants or animals which are not part of that region but they have come from another region into this region is called as the invasive species. So what it says is there is continuing spread of invasive species of flora such as the wattle and pine and exotic weeds like the Scotch broom and grouse, which end up diminishing the grassland. So because there is diminution of this grazing land, there is a possible threat to the Nilgiri. Apart from this, what it further goes on to say is the rise in the animals population has led to a few herds migrating out of the national park into the erstwhile Nilgiri South Provision Division. And apart from this, what are the other possible threats? When we look into the other possible threats, there can be a problem of fire that has taken place in the forest. This can be a threat to the Nilgiri Tahrs. And apart from this, what can also be is the non-timber forest production collection. So these could be the threats to the Nilgiri Tahrs is what we need to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says barges with fly ash set from Ganga to Brahmaputra. So there are two important points that we need to consider from this article. One is with reference to the Inland Waterways Authority of India. The other one is with respect to the National Waterways. So what we need to consider with respect to the Inland Waterways Authority of India is it is a statutory authority. So this is the first important point, which came into existence in the year 1986. So it is headquartered in Noida, which is in Uttar Pradesh, and what it will do is it will develop projects through the grant which is received from the Ministry of Shipping. So what is the overall objective of this Inland Waters Authority of India? So what it will basically do is it will function to perform certain infrastructural development, and this infrastructural development is in reference to the waterways. They survey this whole region, they come up with economical feasible projects, and they also take care of the administration of the national waterways. So this is the basic objective of this Inland Waterways Authority of India. So what we also need to consider from this article is that the article goes on and speaks about important national waterways. So what we also need to consider is what are the important national waterways in India. So the national waterway 1 is along the river Ganga, and this travels from Haldia to Allahabad. What are the states that it serves in? It is in UP, Bihar, Jharkhand as well as West Bengal. And the next one is the National Waterway 2, and this is in the river of Brahmaputra, and this moves from Dhubri to Sadia. And which are the states that it travels in? One is Assam, West Bengal, Arunachal Pradesh as well as Meghalaya. So what is National Waterway 3? It is along the West Coast Canal, that is from Kollam to Kottapuram. So this is the third one, and this serves the state of Kerala. The fourth one is Godavari as well as Krishna canals, and this travels from Kakinada to Puducherry. And what are the states that it serves? It is AP, Tamil Nadu, Union Territory of Puducherry. And the fifth, that is the National Waterway 5, is along the Brahmani river, and this is from Goinkali to Telchar. And the sixth one is with reference to the Barak river, which is here in the northeast, and this is from Lakhimpur to Banga, and it serves the state of Assam, Mizoram, Manipur and Tripura. So this is one of the important articles from the prelims perspective. So they may ask you which is National Waterway 1, or match the following, which are the states that it is associated with and where does it travel, what is the start and the end point of this National Waterways. So this is all we will have to understand with reference to this article. So the two important things is, one is with respect to the Inland Waterways Authority of India, the other one is with reference to the National Waterways in India. So this is what we need to consider with reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says high water discharge from China threatens Arunachal. So what is that we will have to understand in this article? One of the most important points that we will have to understand in this article is that this river is called as Sangpo, and this Sangpo is the Brahmaputra, and this is called as Sangpo in China. So as it enters India, it enters the region of Arunachal Pradesh, and it is called as Siang in Arunachal Pradesh, and this is divided into the Upper Siang, the West Siang as well as Siang, East Siang. So what we have is the Dibang on the other side and then Lohit on the other side. So the Siang, the Dibang as well as Lohit all join together, and then it becomes the Brahmaputra. So this is important point from the prelims perspective, and what we need to consider is Siang flows in the region of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the most important point, but as of now this is all we will have to understand. But in case there is any future updates with respect to the submergence or any disaster in case it strikes, we will have the discussion with respect to this article. But right now just focus on the prelims perspective of Sangpo, the Siang, the Brahmaputra, and how these three different rivers join to become Brahmaputra is what we will have to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article is a very important article, and what we are speaking is with reference to the Atal ranking of institutions on innovations and achievements. So what we will have to understand is, why is that this project was taken up, what is the importance of this project, what are the various parameters it has considered, is all that we will have to understand from this article. So let's try to understand what is the context. So the context here says that the center on Thursday announced annual ranking of higher educational institutions based on how they fare in terms of innovation. So what does it mean? In order to promote a culture of innovation and research in the higher education sector, the union government, that is under the Ministry of Human Resource Development, has come up with this project, and that is the Atal ranking of institutions on innovations and achievements. So what we need to consider in this particular program is, what are the various parameters and how is that the government has taken these parameters. So what we need to consider is, there are certain international and global parameters and indicators. So the government has taken the framework or the structure from this international parameters, and it has used the same parameter so that there is uniformity in the process of ranking. So what the government has done in this clearly is that it has taken certain important parameters from the international paradigm or a model, and it is used the same model for allocation of ranking to the Indian universities. And this, what we need to consider is, this will work in parallel with the overall ranking of the institutions that is captured by the annual national institutional ranking framework. So this is something exclusive, another important project, but there will also be another project, and that is the national institutional ranking framework. So what we need to consider is this national institutional ranking framework is basically on the basis of research. So what it will do is it will conduct a number of surveys, it will do a lot of research, it will do a lot of development. So it is explicitly focused on the research aspect and the overall aspect of how the higher education is. But what this aspect of Atal ranking will do is it is focused on the innovation aspect. So it is only focused on the innovation aspect and not the overall curriculum of the higher education. So what it decides is what is the innovation that a particular university has produced. Is it this university has produced more number of innovations? What is the impact of this innovation? So all that this Atal innovation will look is that aspect which is focusing on the innovation and not at the overall idea. So the research that this is the National Institution of Ranking is doing is it is an overall survey, but what the Atal ranking will do is it is an exclusive one that is only focusing on the innovation aspect. So in case there is a college which is giving more number of innovations, then it means the ranking in this hierarchy will be comparatively more. So what we need to consider is it is an exclusive approach to make sure that there is a region or there is the atmosphere of culture that is innovated, and that is innovation hub. So what we also need to consider is when we are speaking about research, research is basically about creating new knowledge. So it is addition of knowledge, while innovation is something which is exclusively restricted or has a narrow domain. So it is implementation of the research. So research is analysis, it is development, it is looking into a number of aspects of how it can be upgraded. But all these things, the survey that is taken, the research that is taken as a whole, when it is implemented, the implementation part is what is focused, and that is the innovation aspect that we are currently focusing on. So what we need to consider is it has certain indicators. So what are these indicators that it is focusing on? One is the budget, expenses and revenue generated through innovation and entrepreneurship development, and the weightage for this is 20. Facilitating access to the advanced centers, facilities and entrepreneurial support system, that will be given a weightage of 10. So is this university establishing a number of centers in order to give boost to the innovation, or is this setup that the university has given, is it giving rise to the entrepreneurship? This is the aspect that is being looked into, and this has a link to the idea of entrepreneurship, which is giving rise to 54 points. And development of innovation ecosystem supported through teaching as well as learning, and best innovative solutions developed in-house for improving the governance of your institution. So what this is majorly focusing on is the quantity is a secondary aspect, but it is the quality. So what it goes on to say is when we say quality, it is a number of innovations does not matter, but how is the quality of this innovation? Is it able to bring about a shift in the governance pattern? If it is able to bring about a shift in the governance pattern, or it is able to change a number of modalities, or it is able to get the recognition nationally and internationally, that is what will be looked into and not the quantity. So what it is currently focusing on is the quality of the innovation. It is not the number of innovations that are being done by the university, but the impact that this single innovation is being done. So there are number of innovations, this would not be considered. If the impact of this innovation is comparatively more, and if it is able to drive the governance along with it, that is what is going to create a larger impact, and that is what is being considered under this program. So these are the all important parameters that the center will be looking in order to rank a particular university. So what is the significance? So when we look into the significance, what we can understand is that this will be able to drive the competition. So there are different universities, and each university want to compete amongst themselves. So when there is competition amongst themselves, what can this lead to is more innovation. So there are colleges, they want to compete, and when there is more competition, there will be more number of innovations, and that is why the central has come up with this particular proposal. And apart from this, what this can also lead to is more research, and when there is more research, what it can result in is the international ranking of all these colleges will boost up, and as a result the reputation of the country increases as a whole, and then there are other students who can also come down to India to study. And the last and most important point is that it will also give rise to the entrepreneurship as a whole, which will help in development of employment. So this is all we will have to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says Pan-India reservations rule applies to Delhi. Let's understand a hypothetical situation first. So there is a person A, and this person is a resident of, let's say, Goa, and he belongs to the community of SC and ST. So there are certain reservations, so there are certain benefits. So all these benefits and reservations that is there in the state of Goa, he'll be able to extract the benefits in terms of the education as well as in terms of the employment. Now let's say this person who is the resident of Goa, in case he goes up to Karnataka, so he goes to Karnataka, so will he be able to claim the same benefits in Karnataka, is the question what the Supreme Court was asked. So in this particular question, that is with reference to the Bir Singh versus the Delhi Jal Board, a 2013 question on the legal question whether a scheduled caste person or a scheduled tribe person from a state would be awarded the same concessions in the employment in another state. So he is a resident of Goa, he will be able to get all the important benefits in terms of the education and the employment, and he will have the reservation. But if he goes to Karnataka, will he have the same reservations, was what was posed with respect to this case. And what the Supreme Court has given in this particular case is that the reservation is completely state specific, but Delhi is a miniature India where the pan-India reservation rule applies. So what is that we will have to understand is that a person in Goa who is a resident of Goa, he will not be able to claim his reservation or the benefits in the region of Karnataka. So he is in Goa, he may go to Maharashtra tomorrow, he may go to Uttar Pradesh day after, so he may be changing his places, but his benefits is restricted only to the state of Goa and he cannot claim it in other states. So there is a procedure, and this procedure says that he will be able to extract all his benefits only in the state of Goa and not in any other state. So this is the first point that we need to consider. However, what the Supreme Court has also said is that it has made a clear point. So there was a majority ruling, and this majority ruling says that there is an exception. So what is an exception? The exception is with reference to the national capital, and that is Delhi. So what it has gone on to say is, but in the region of Delhi, any person from any state, whether he is from Goa, whether he is from Karnataka, whether he is from Maharashtra, whether he is from Uttar Pradesh, any state whatsoever, in case he is planning to apply or extract some benefits in Union Territory Delhi, then he would be able to apply the same thing. So with reference to other states, he will not be able to extract any of the benefits. It is only restricted to that specific state or the geographical area. But when it comes to Delhi, any person from any state, if his name is there in the SC/ST list in that state, he would be able to claim his reservations in the Union Territory of Delhi. This is only restricted to Delhi. This is not to any other Union Territories, but only restricted to the Union Territory of Delhi. So what is the arguments that the Supreme Court has said in this particular case? So what the Supreme Court has said is, this Delhi is not just a part of India, but it is the national capital of India. So when it is the national capital, what it represents is a miniature size of India. So there is lot of diversity in India, and people come down to Delhi in order to find the economic benefits, to derive a maximum from Delhi. And because Delhi represents the whole of India and not a restricted part of India, so what we need to consider is that it is a megapolitan city, and people from all flocks of size and people from all cities come up to this place. And because it is this region which is representing the diversity of India, Delhi should be accommodative to all people, especially with respect to the request of the SC/ST, and that is what the Delhi High Court has said. However, what we also need to consider is that there was one of the voices of dissent, and that was with reference to Bhanumati. So what Bhanumati had clearly said in this is, though the judgment is clearly saying that these people would be able to come down to Delhi and they will be able to take up certain reservations. But there was one of the dissenting voices, and that came up from Bhanumati. So what Judge Bhanumati said was there could not be any distinction between the states and the union territories. Even the union territories, for that matter, will have its own state of restrictions, and this restrictions should be given with respect to Delhi as well. But this is just the opinion of Bhanumati, but the overall judgment is any person that is, in case he is a part of SC/ST and if his name is there in the list of that state, he would be able to come up to Delhi and he would be able to claim the reservations. Why is he able to claim the reservations? The simple reason is because all these things that are there, all the important reservations with respect to education or economic, is indirectly supporting the central government. So because it is indirectly supporting the central government, that is why these people would be able to claim the benefits under the SC/ST Act. So this is what we need to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says Law Commission calls for rethink on sedition clause. So there is an overall video with respect to the sedition, so kindly look into the video for the same. However, let's restrict ourselves to what is being spoken from this Law Commission report. So what is the context? So there was one of the committees, and this committee is headed by the Justice B.S. Chauhan, and it looked into the sedition and it has given certain important arguments. So what it has said is that this whole idea of sedition is something of the past. So what we need to consider is it is a pre-independence sedition one, and this was raised by the British. So this was an act, or this was a section that was introduced by the British in order to suppress the voices of the Indians. So what we need to consider is this British act has to be gone. Why? This whole idea of sedition which British introduced, they themselves are not following right now. So this is one of the important acts that the British came up with, and because they are only not using the same sedition laws which they used to oppress the Indians, why is that we will have to continue with this sedition process? And then it also goes on to say that dissent and criticism is a part of democracy. So democracy is all about people having a political advantage. They'll be able to voice their opinion, they would be able to express their frustration, and this should not be treated as sedition. So what we need to consider at this point is that nation should be going forward, it should be treating this as the positive criticism. So in case there is no positive criticism, or if it is not taken easily, what is the difference between the pre-independence, what is the difference between the post-independence? So we have fought tooth and nail with the British, and we have made sure that all our freedom of expression are continuing. But what is happening is, in case we are not able to take up this positive criticism, then there is no freedom of speech, and this will curb the overall idea of democracy. So in case you want to enforce things, this cannot be done. Why? Because people have their own ways of expressing patriotism. So people have the liberty to actually say how they want to express their love for the country. So you cannot express the way you want it, but however people want it, they'll be expressing, and they have the liberty to express that freedom, and they can show patriotism in any which way. So there is no restricted mode, there is no narrow mode, and there is no single path of patriotism. But when there is single path of patriotism, what this can lead to is a frustration, and when there is frustration, there is instability, and this can lead to a lot of chaos in the society. And what it has further gone on to say is that we can make certain changes. So the commission asked whether it would be worthwhile to rename section 124A and find a suitable substitute for the term sedition. So what we need to consider is all these recommendations that the Law Commission has made is just advisory. So these are something that are of importance from the understanding purposes. So what the Law Commission do is it takes up a particular important law, it looks into the prospective, the importance, and all the negative and the positive, and it then gives the advisory to the government of India. So it is not binding on the government to follow this. So this becomes a very important point from the prelims perspective. So it just gives the advices to the government, but all these advices the government may take it or may not take it. So it is not binding on the government to actually implement these laws. And apart from this, what we also need to consider is the Supreme Court also came up recently about the sedition, and what it has also said is that dissent is the safety valve of the democracy. So kindly remember this statement that the Supreme Court has said. So this can be put up in whenever you are writing an answer with respect to the voicing of opinion in the democracy. So this is all we will have to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says Russia, China set to launch joint military exercises. So what are we speaking about? It is in with reference to the Vostok 2018. So what is it? So it is a 5-day important program that will be bigger than the Zapad 81. So the first point from the prelims perspective that we need to consider is what is Zapad 81. So what is Zapad 81 is, it is a largest military exercise. So when did it happen? It happened in the year 1981, and this happened during the era of Cold War. So there was a lot of Cold War, and in order to show its power, the erstwhile Soviet Union made sure to showcase its power and its force to all the NATO countries. It came up with this particular act of Zapad 81. So what is being said is that this Vostok will be greater than the Zapad 81. So what Russia and China are planning to come up with, they will have an exercise called as the Vostok 2018. So this Vostok 2018 will be something greater, and this will have more military exercises than what we witnessed in Zapad 81, which way back in the 1981. So what are the various details that we will have to understand? So one of the important points that we will have to understand is, apart from Russia and China, Mongolia is also taking part in this exercise. So this Vostok 2018 will involve 3 lakh troops. They'll engage in tri-service mock operations involving 1,000 military aircraft, 2 of Russia's naval fleets, and all its airborne units, Russian Defense Minister Sergei said. And nearly 36,000 military vehicles will participate in the drills at the Russia's Sugol training range in the Trikal region, and China will dispatch about 3,200 troops along with more than 900 pieces of weaponry, as well as 30 fixed aircraft as well as helicopters. So what we need to consider in this particular idea is that there was Cold War back then in the early 1990s. So in this era where US has put in a lot of sanctions on with respect to Russia and China are coming together in order to make sure that USA does not dominate over these two countries. So this is what we need to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says speeding up the adoption process. So what we need to consider is, this whole article is speaking about how the adoption of the children happens. So the first point that we need to consider is, what is an adoption? So there is an orphan kid, and this orphan kid does not have a biological parents, and there are other parents who are wanting to have kids but they don't have kids of their own. So what happens in this case is the parents adopt the orphan kid, and this adoption of the orphan kid and making of a family is called as the adoption process. So what we need to consider is, what is the procedure for the adoption? So when we look into the procedure, what we will have to understand in this particular case is, let's say there are parents who want to adopt a particular child. So in this particular case, what they'll have to first do is, they'll have to file an application with the Children Welfare Agency. So they file an application with the Children Welfare Agency. So once they have filed the application, they'll have to register themselves with the Adoption Coordination Agency. So this Adoption Coordination Agency is one where the registration have to be done. So this is usually there in the capital of every state. So in case there is a problem, what they can also do is, there is an important authority, and that is called as CARA. So what CARA does is, that is Central Adoption Resource Authority. So it will certify certain agencies to make sure that this becomes a successful program. So what it does is, CARA actually gives a registration, or it provides certain agencies a certificate. So there is an agency, and this agency is provided the certificate by CARA. So what happens is, so first thing is, you will have to make an application to the Children Welfare Agency, and after this you will have to register it under the Adoption coordinating agency. If there is no adoption coordinating agency, there can be another agency, and this has to have a certification from CARA. So after the registration and application process is done, then what we need to do is there is this agency or the ARRIA which has an interview with the parents. So what it will do is it will have a preliminary interview with this adopting couple, and they'll understand what is the intention as well as the motivation. So the third important point that we need to consider is this agency will conduct an interview with the couple, and then in case they are happy with the responses, finally what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to go to the court, and once they are addressing the court will have to give them permission within 2 months to adopt this kid who is there in the orphanage. So this is the practice that usually happens. So first thing is the application part, then it is the registration part, and then they'll have the interview with this agency which has been certified by CARA, and finally they'll have to go to the court, and this court will be there with respect to that jurisdiction. So whatever is the jurisdiction of that district court, so they'll have to go to this district court. So within 2 months the court gives them the permission, and they would be able to get the adoption of these children, and they'll be able to make a beautiful family out of it. So what we need to consider in this is the problems. So what is the problem is we will have to head back to one of the important acts, and that is the Juvenile Justice Act of 2015. So in this Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 there is a chapter 8, and this deals with the adoption. So what does it say? It says that subsection 1 of section 56 of the act says adoption shall be resorted to for ensuring right to family for the orphaned, abandoned or surrendered children. So it is speaking about how to adopt with reference to the orphan children, that is section 56. And then section 63 of the act states that adoption is final on the issuance of the adoption order by the court. So when there is an adoption order issued by the court, then this becomes a overall perspective, and this is a successful one. And then subsection 2 of section 61 of the act provides that adoption proceedings shall be held in camera, and the case shall be disposed of the court within a period of 2 months from the date of filing. So this is a step that it takes as to how it happens in the court of law. But what is the concern, or what is the problems? So when we look into the problems, we will have to head back to one of the important affidavits, and that is with reference to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So this National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has raised certain concerns. So what are these concerns? What it says is that out of 203 special adoption agencies audited, merely 8 deserved positive reviews. So there has been only few adoption centers that has got the positive review. And apart from this, what it has further gone on to say is it has been observed that there is an inordinate delay in issuing adoption orders. So the second most important point that we need to consider is there has been delay by the court in order to provide the adoption order. So the court will have to give its adoption order for the parents to take this orphan children and make a family. But the problem right now is it is not making sure that the order is completed within 2 months, and there is a lot of delay. So it also takes up one of the example. It says as of July 2018, there are 629 cases for adoption pending in various courts across the country. So due to delay in issuing of adoption orders by the court, children continue to stay in children care institutions even after getting a family. So these are the important problems with reference to the Juvenile Justice Act of 2015. So in order to overcome the delays that the court are currently doing, what the government has come up with is the Juvenile Justice Care and the Protection of the Children Amendment Bill. So what it does is it wants to remedy this whole situation. So what is the process that it is planning to come up with? So in the interest of the child, it imposes the amend the Juvenile Justice Act to empower the district magistrate instead of the court. So from now on, what will happen is the court will need not have to give this order, but instead the district magistrate will be able to give this order. So all the delay that has been currently seen because of the courts will be completely surfaced off, and what we will have is a new structure where the district magistrate will be able to conclude whether this process is a successful one or not. So this is what we need to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says shocking negligence. So what is this article all about? So we are speaking with reference to the hip replacement surgeries. So first thing that we need to understand is how exactly does the hip replacement surgery happen. So what we need to consider is the hip joint consists of what is called as the ball, and then what we have is a socket, and what this will also have is an extra layer of cartilage that it surrounds, and this will also have a membrane to protect against the wear and tear. So what we basically have in this hip region is the socket, the ball, then we have is the cartilage, and then what we have is the, so all these are provided in order to reduce the wear and tear. So what happens in the hip replacement procedure is all these components that are currently there, in case they are under trouble, what will happen is there is replacement of an artificial device, and that replacement of the artificial device is called as the prosthetics. So what happens in this case? So there is a problem in the hip region. So because there is a problem in the hip region, what we have is the replacement of this original parts by the prosthetic components, and that is nothing but the artificial devices. So this operation or the replacement of the original part by the prosthetics will have many mechanisms. So what are the various mechanisms? So this can involve the replacement of the prosthetics, that is artificial device can be a metal, or it can be a strong plastic, or it can also be a ceramic. But what is the whole controversy all about? So the whole controversy all about is that this replacement has made use of metals while replacing the original part. So you have the ball in this particular area, and then you also have the socket. So what happens is when there is ball and this socket, which is both made of metal, there will be wear and tear. So there is ball here, and then there is also this socket. So there is rubbing of both these ball and the metal. So when there is wear and tear, and when there is wear and tear, what can potentially happen is this can lead to release of the metallic debris. So what is the overall idea? So what is happening is there is one of the companies, and this company is called as the DPay International Limited. So they came up with one of the important procedures, and that was to do with the hip replacement surgery. What they did was they used one of the surgeries, and this surgery involved what is called as the metal and socket surgery, and this involved two important metals, and this important metals that was used as a product of ASR. So what is the ASR? It is the articular surface replacement for the hip replacement surgery. So what they basically did was they came up with this important thing of replacing the hip, that is the socket and the ball, where both these things were the metal, and when the both socket as well as the ball were the metal, what we need to consider is there is friction that it develops, and when there is friction that is being developed, what happens is there is metallic debris, and this metallic debris that is generated because of the friction between the ball as well as the socket, this can lead to complications. Why? Because this metallic debris, whatever is there, flows into the bloodstream, and when it flows into the bloodstream, this can lead to a lot of side effects, and that is why it has become a complications. So because there has been a lot of complications, the government came up with one of the important committees, and the committee was appointed to look into what are the various complications that this surgery was actually conducted by Johnson & Johnson came up with. So what we need to consider is that this committee that was appointed was headed by one of the important officers, and that is from Arun Kumar. So Arun Kumar headed committee look into what are the various complications, and then this committee actually came up and did a number of surveys of the people who went through this surgery, and when they came up with this surgery details, what they came across was number of important factual data. Resulted within that patient was a large scale complications. So what are the complications that they felt? One of the major problem was the pain. So because it was the metal and the metal, because there was a lot of friction that was developed, these people who had the hip replacement surgeries had to go through a lot of pain. So because they had to go through a lot of pain, pain, this resulted in what is called as the revision surgeries. So what is revision surgeries? There is already a surgery that is being done, but this surgery was not a complete one. This was not a successful one. So in order to overcome this defect of the first surgery, what they had to go through was a revision surgery. So what this survey came to a conclusion was that the number of people, that is the patients who actually went through this survey, resultant was that they had to face a number of revision surgeries. First point is they faced a lot of pain, and this pain they had to somehow overcome, and when they had to overcome, they had to go through these revision surgeries, and this was not restricted to one. Sometimes it went up to 2 revision surgeries. And apart from this, they also felt the pain of walking, so they were not able to walk, and in few situations they led to a lot of issues with respect to the fatigue. And what was the major problem was there was a problem with respect to the kidney, and this is the major problem. And apart from this, there was also a problem with increase in the cobalt and the chromium. So the metal that was used in this particular cases, the cobalt, the aluminium, as well as the chromium. So because there was use of these metals, there was increase in the metallosis, that is the increase in the metal in the blood, and this also resultant was the reduced sperm motility. So all these were the complications that all these patients developed because of this surgery. So what is the overall concern? That this report also says that J&J did not inform the Indian regulator, and Indians kept using the implants until the firm began a voluntary global recall in 2010. So India actually came up, India opened up to this surgery in the year 2006, but there were a lot of complications that were being reported in and around. But this did not surface in India until 2010, when they had a major global impact. So what it further goes on to say is, in the following years, J&J's action in India differed widely from those in other countries. While it began corrective surgeries almost immediately in USA, the first Indian surgery happened in 2014. So the minute it found out that the surgery was not a successful one, and there was large scale complications that was resulting because of these surgeries, they immediately went about the revision surgery in USA. But this happened in India only in the year 2014. They came about with this process, they got to know that there is a problem in 2010, but the first revision surgery that happened in India was only in 2014. So apart from this, there were a number of things that India had to go through. That is, the company claims that it had trouble tracked patients in India, that is, it had problem finding out patients in India. Of the 4,700 implants that was done in India, only 1,032 recipients had been contacted, and J&J paid, that is 2.47 billion in claims. But with reference to USA, 8,000 patients were revision surgeries, but no Indian patient received compensation for the same. So these are some of the problem areas that we need to consider. And what it also says is, there is one of the important acts, and that is the meteorovigilance program. So what is this meteorovigilance program? This came up in India in the year 2015. So what this program basically goes on to say is, it wants to ensure the safety of the medical devices, but this came up in only 2015. So this was not there when India actually gave permission in the year 2006. What this committee report goes on to say is that had India developed this program back then in 2006, we would have been able to stop the whole problem, and we would have not had this problem that is surfacing right now. And further, what we need to understand is, who is it with reference to the other countries. So this is the problem with respect to India, and when we look into the overall problem, there are a number of countries which also face the problem. One is the Australia and USA. So Australia gave approval to this product in the year 2004, but in the year 2009, whatever this product was, because it was a problem and it is surfacing a lot of issues, this product was completely removed from the Australian market. And apart from this, USA is also keeping a constant watch of the revision surgeries that was supposed to be done for all the patients who went through this hip surgery program. So these are some of the things that we need to consider from this article. So this is it for today. Kindly look into the BYJU'S CNA, look into the practice questions, both pre as well as mains. Write all your answers on the comment section so that we can evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.